Okay, and now introduction to Azure Governance and Compliance. Azure Governance and Compliance are essential for managing Azure environments effectively. They help ensure resources are deployed and used in a secure and compliant manner, meeting organizational policies and regulatory requirements. Importance of governance in Azure. Ensure compliance with regulations. Azure Governance helps organizations comply with industry standards and regulations, such as HIPAA, GDPR, and PCI DSS. Reduce security risks. By implementing strong governance policies, organizations can minimize security vulnerabilities and prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data. Optimize resource utilization. Governance policies can help organizations manage their cloud resources effectively, ensuring optimal resource allocation and reducing costs. Improve operational efficiency. Streamlined governance processes can automate tasks and improve operational efficiency, freeing up IT teams to focus on strategic initiatives. Enhance collaboration. Governance provides a framework for collaboration between different teams, ensuring consistent policies and practices across the organization. Defining Azure Governance. Azure Governance encompasses the policies, processes, and controls to manage and govern Azure resources effectively. It aims to ensure consistent implementation, security, compliance, and cost optimization across the Azure environment. Governance helps organizations streamline operations, reduce risks, and maintain control over their Azure deployments. This includes defining clear responsibilities, establishing security protocols, and enforcing compliance regulations. Key components of Azure Governance. Azure Policy. Azure Policy is a service that helps you enforce standards and compliance across your Azure resources. It allows you to define roles that govern how your resources are configured and deployed. Azure Blueprints. Azure Blueprints provide a way to define and deploy infrastructure as code. They are a collection of artifacts, such as Azure policy definitions and role assignments, that are packaged together and deployed as a single unit. Azure Resource Locks. Resource locks provide a mechanism to prevent accidental deletion or modification of Azure resources. They help to ensure that critical resources remain intact. Azure Policy. Azure Policy is a core component of Azure Governance. It defines and enforces roles for resources in your Azure environment. Policy helps ensure compliance with organizational standards and security best practices. Azure Policy uses definitions and assignments to manage resource configurations. Policy definitions specify the roles, and assignments target specific scopes for enforcement. Azure Policy Definitions. Azure Policy Definitions. Azure Policy Definitions are JSON documents that define roles for resources in Azure. These roles can restrict, modify, or audit resources. Policy definitions are created and managed in the Azure portal or by using the Azure CLI or PowerShell. Types of policy definitions. There are several types of policy definitions, including built-in definitions provided by Microsoft, custom definitions created by users, and third-party definitions from the Azure Marketplace. Azure Policy Assignments. Scope definition. Azure Policy Assignments define the scope of application. This could be a resource group, subscription, or management group. Policy definition selection. Policy definitions are selected based on the desired governance requirements. These definitions define the roles and controls to be enforced. Enforcement and monitoring. Once assigned, Azure Policy enforces the selected definitions. Policy compliance is tracked, providing visibility into policy adherence. Azure Policy Effects. Deny. This effect prevents non-compliant resources from being created. It helps enforce strict security and compliance standards. Audit. This effect monitors compliance and logs any violations. It helps identify potential issues and track compliance over time. Deploy if not exists. This effect ensures that compliant resources are deployed. It helps enforce consistent configurations and best practices. Modify. This effect modifies non-compliant resources to achieve compliance. It can be used to automatically fix common configuration issues. Azure Policy Compliance. Azure Policy Compliance is the process of ensuring that Azure resources adhere to defined policies. It involves monitoring, evaluating, and enforcing compliance with policy roles. Policy compliance can be achieved through automation, regular assessments, and remediation actions. Azure Policy provides tools for visualizing compliance status, identifying deviations, and taking corrective measures. It offers insights into the overall health and security posture of Azure environments. Azure Blueprints. Azure Blueprints are a powerful tool for defining and deploying consistent, reusable Azure environments. They are pre-configured, multi-service deployments that include best practices and guardrails to ensure compliance and consistency. Azure Blueprints define a collection of artifacts, such as Azure policy definitions, role assignments, resource deployments, and network configurations. These artifacts are bundled together to automate the provisioning of infrastructure, applications, and configurations. Azure Blueprints Artifacts. Resource Templates. Azure Blueprints artifacts define the resources that will be deployed when a blueprint is assigned. Policy definitions. These artifacts enforce governance rules and compliance requirements during deployment. Role assignments. They specify the permissions that users and groups will have on the deployed resources. Deployment targets. These artifacts specify the subscriptions and resource groups where the blueprint will be deployed. Azure Blueprints assignments. 1. Define blueprint scope. Define target subscriptions and resource groups. 2. Assign blueprint. Link blueprint to specific subscriptions. 3. Trigger blueprint deployment. Initiate provisioning of resources and configurations. 4. Monitor deployment status. Track the progress and success of the assignment. Assignments enable the application of blueprints to specific environments. The scope of an assignment determines which subscriptions and resource groups are affected. When a blueprint is assigned, Azure provisions resources and applies configurations according to the defined template. Monitoring the deployment status provides visibility into the progress and success of the assignment. Azure Blueprints versioning. Azure Blueprints support versioning, enabling tracking and managing changes over time. Each blueprint has a unique version, allowing for easy identification and rollback if necessary. Versioning helps in managing different environments, such as development, test, and production, with specific configurations for each. It also facilitates collaboration, as multiple versions can be used by different teams or departments. Azure Resource Locks. Azure Resource Locks restrict changes to Azure resources, preventing accidental or unauthorized modifications. They help enforce governance policies and maintain desired configurations. You can apply locks at the resource group or individual resource level. Read-only locks prevent modifications but allow deletion. Cannot delete locks prohibit deletion but allow modifications. Delete locks prevent any changes, including deletion. Resource lock types. 1. Cannot delete. Prevents the deletion of a resource. This lock allows modification of other resource properties. 2. Read-only. Prohibits any changes to a resource. The resource can be accessed, but no updates or modifications are allowed. Free delete. Does not restrict any operations. This is the default lock setting, allowing for any action. Applying resource locks. 1. Scope selection. Resource locks can be applied to individual resources, resource groups, or subscriptions. Choose the appropriate scope based on the desired level of protection. 2. Lock type. Select the appropriate lock type, cannot delete, read-only, or delete. Each type restricts different actions. 3. Lock application. Use the Azure portal, Azure CLI, or PowerShell to apply the lock. This involves specifying the resource, lock type, and any additional parameters. 4. Lock validation. Verify the lock has been applied correctly. Attempt a restricted action to confirm the lock is in place. Resource lock enforcement. Resource locks enforce restrictions on resources in your Azure environment. These locks can be applied to individual resources, resource groups, or subscriptions. When a lock is applied, it prevents certain operations from being performed on the resource, including deletion, modification, or deployment. Resource locks are an important component of Azure governance, allowing you to secure critical resources from accidental or unauthorized changes. This ensures data integrity and application stability by preventing unintended modifications. Governance and compliance challenges. Organizations often face difficulties in establishing and enforcing effective governance and compliance strategies in cloud environments. Maintaining consistency across multiple Azure subscriptions and resource groups can be a challenge. Monitoring and auditing compliance with various regulatory requirements and industry standards can be complex and time-consuming. Integrating governance and compliance processes with existing DevOps workflows can be challenging. Staying informed about evolving compliance regulations and best practices is crucial. Governance and compliance best practices. Foster collaboration. Encourage cross-functional collaboration between security, compliance, and operations teams to achieve robust governance. Define clear roles. Establish clear roles and responsibilities for governance tasks, including policy creation, assignment, and enforcement. Continuously monitor. Regularly monitor and audit governance controls to identify and address gaps or inefficiencies. Automate processes. Leverage automation tools to streamline governance tasks and reduce manual effort. Aligning governance with business objectives. Aligning Azure governance with business objectives is crucial for maximizing value and ensuring compliance. Azure governance should directly support strategic goals, risk management, and operational efficiency. Governance should be tailored to specific business needs, such as security, cost optimization, and regulatory compliance. For example, if a business prioritizes security, governance should focus on implementing strong access controls and data encryption. Implementing governance processes. Establishing robust governance processes is crucial for achieving organizational objectives and ensuring compliance with regulatory requirements. 1. Define clear policies. Establish comprehensive policies covering data security, access control, and compliance. 2. Implement controls. Implement technical and administrative controls to enforce policies and mitigate risks. 3. Regular reviews. Conduct regular reviews of processes to identify gaps and areas for improvement. 4. Automate processes. Leverage automation tools to streamline tasks and improve efficiency. 5. Continuous monitoring. Monitor governance activities for compliance and effectiveness. Monitoring and auditing governance. Regularly monitoring and auditing your Azure governance implementation is crucial for ensuring its effectiveness and compliance. Establish a comprehensive monitoring system to track policy compliance, blueprint deployments, and resource lock enforcement. Automate audits to identify potential configuration deviations, policy violations, or security vulnerabilities. Conduct regular reviews of governance configurations and make necessary adjustments based on audit findings and evolving business requirements. Governance reporting and dashboards. Visualizing compliance. Dashboards provide a clear view of compliance status, highlighting areas that require attention and showcasing overall progress. Identifying trends. Reporting and dashboards can help identify trends in compliance over time, enabling proactive measures and continuous improvement. Facilitating communication. These tools effectively communicate governance status to stakeholders, including management, auditors, and compliance teams. Driving actionable insights. Dashboards can present data in a way that encourages action, enabling teams to make data-driven decisions for better governance. Governance roles and responsibilities. Defining clear roles and responsibilities is critical for successful governance. Establish a governance team with representatives from different departments. Assign specific responsibilities to each team member, such as policy creation, enforcement, and reporting. Document roles and responsibilities in a clear and concise manner, making it readily accessible to all stakeholders. Regularly review and update roles and responsibilities as needed to ensure alignment with evolving business needs and regulatory requirements. Governance training and awareness. Training and awareness are crucial for successful governance implementation. Empower employees to understand and embrace governance best practices. Develop comprehensive training programs that cater to different roles and responsibilities. Foster a culture of compliance by regularly communicating governance policies and procedures. Use interactive materials, including videos, simulations, and quizzes, to make training engaging. Encourage participation through workshops, webinars, and Q&A sessions. Track training completion and assess the impact on governance behavior. Continuously improve training programs based on feedback and evolving compliance needs. Continuous governance improvement. Governance is a continuous process, requiring ongoing review and improvement. Regularly assess current governance practices, identifying areas for enhancement. Incorporate lessons learned from audits, incidents, and evolving security threats. Stay abreast of industry best practices and evolving compliance requirements. Continuously monitor and refine governance mechanisms to maximize effectiveness. Integrating governance with DevOps. Integrating governance into DevOps practices ensures that security and compliance are woven into the software development lifecycle. This approach, known as DevSecOps, promotes proactive measures for security and compliance, eliminating potential risks early on. Governance controls, such as Azure Policy, can be seamlessly integrated into CI/CD pipelines, enabling automated checks and enforcement. This integration ensures that security and compliance are not afterthoughts but are built into every stage of the development process. Governance and compliance regulatory requirements. Regulations are an important part of governance and compliance. Organizations must comply with regulations such as HIPAA, GDPR, and PCI DSS. Azure offers features to help organizations meet regulatory requirements. Azure offers services like Azure Security Center, Azure Sentinel, and Azure Key Vault. Organizations can use these services to meet regulatory requirements and ensure data security. Governance and compliance maturity model. 1. Initial. Organizations are starting their governance journey. They are just beginning to implement basic security and compliance controls. 2. Repeatable. Organizations have established processes and procedures for governance and compliance. 3. Defined. Organizations have documented policies, standards, and procedures for governance and compliance. 4. Managed. Organizations have implemented metrics and processes to monitor and improve governance and compliance. 5. Optimized. Organizations have a mature governance and compliance program that is integrated into their business processes. Governance and compliance metrics and KPIs. Monitoring and measuring the effectiveness of your governance and compliance program is essential. You can define metrics and KPIs to track key areas such as policy compliance rates, security posture, and regulatory compliance status. These metrics can be used to identify areas for improvement and demonstrate the value of your program to stakeholders. Metric. Description. Policy compliance rate. Percentage of resources that are compliant with defined policies. Security posture score. Overall assessment of the security of your Azure environment. Regulatory compliance status. Compliance status with relevant regulations and standards. Conclusion: embracing Azure governance and compliance. By embracing Azure governance and compliance, organizations can unlock the full potential of Azure while ensuring security, reliability, and regulatory compliance. A proactive approach to governance helps optimize cloud resources, reduce risks, and achieve business objectives. Thank you for listening.